I remember in speaking with you,
Hmm.
and I feel like I heard this from you a couple times. I would, refer to you as a nutritionist,
Yes.
but hear you refer to yourself as a registered dietitian,
Right.
not in an effort to divide the two,
Yep.
because I imagine that they both want to achieve the same goals, achieve the
Hmm.
same thing.
Hmm.
What is the difference between a nutritionist and a registered dietitian?
I'm so glad you asked that, Jonathan. It's a great question. So there is a difference. And actually, there's, I feel like it's ever evolving, but a registered dietitian or an RD, sometimes you might see those letters. People always ask, what do the letters after your name mean? And actually, to confuse it, we are now being known as registered dietitian nutritionists because
So are the letters RDN now?
technically, what's funny? I technically still use RD, but yes, R. So if you see RD, and that is like technically the new
The new thing.
credentialing,
Got
right?
it.
A
Yeah.
lot of us still use RD, that we're old school. But when you have someone that might just have nutritionist after their name, so I'll speak to an RD credentialing. So in order to achieve those letters after your name, those letters are a lot of years. So in order to get those letters, you have to go through dedicated coursework. So I went through a 40 credit program at NYU, and that is a standard program, though, about the 40 to 40 credits. I know some things have changed since way back in the day when I was doing it, but it's there's a standardized set of courses set forth by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. That's our governing body
Mm.
as dietitians. So you have to go to an academic university, you have to apply into a program, do all that academic coursework, and that is the hard science. That is the organic chemistry. That is the anatomy, physiology. There's also, you take food production courses. It covers the gamut, really runs the gamut there. So once you complete that coursework, you apply to what's called a dietetic internship,
Mm.
and you're matched, much like medical school. So I did my dietetic internship at Weill Cornell Medical Center in New York City.
Mm.
I spent a full year. See where I'm going with time
I
on this?
see.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the
Yeah.
big takeaway from this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I spent a full year doing rotations throughout Weill Cornell Medical Center in all different areas of nutrition, right? Really
Hmm.
clinical nutrition. And then once you finish that year, you can sit for your licensing exam. Once you pass that, boom, RD credentials.
I see.
So those letters, behind those letters stand years of school,
Yep.
a year in a clinical setting where you have to achieve certain milestones. So you understand nutrition, you
Yeah.
understand how the body works.
Yeah.
So to get those credentials, you go through a lot of work. And often there's also a master's degree associated with that. And the academy is starting to require that too. So I also have a master's of clinical nutrition as well. So an MS, Master of Clinical
Hmm.
Nutrition. Flip side. So someone who uses, sometimes an RD might just use the term, oh, I'm a nutritionist, like, and they might also be an RD. But if someone does not have those credentials, typically there's a lot of like certification programs out there. And they're not accredited programs. They're usually a lot shorter, and you're not getting the same clinical training. And
I see.
a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to do clinical nutrition. And my response to that is nutrition is clinical.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you're doing weight loss counseling or you're doing sports nutrition. You need to have that vast understanding of how the body works. You need to have taken all the biochemistry, and because all of those things teach you about how the body works. So
Right.
it's a very in-depth, you're getting someone who's again gone through a lot of education, a lot of schooling in order to achieve those credentials. So
Right.
there's actually quite a big difference.
That's a huge difference.
Yes. Yes.
That's a huge
Yes,
difference.
exactly.
Oh.
So
So yeah, I see. There's definitely a lot of schooling that
a
comes
lot of
with it.
schooling. Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of education.
So then the other thing is, I know that there are some individuals who may not even have a certification, and they would call themselves a nutritionist.
Yes.
And I'm sure they
Yes.
probably have done research themselves and things like that, not to discredit
Exactly.
their
I don't mean
experience
to discredit people. Right.
right.
Exactly.
But there is that
Yeah.
that big of a gap between.
There is. There is. And I say there's always the people that people might have a master's of nutrition, but not gone through that internship process and sat for an exam. So there are definitely sort of exceptions
Sure.
to the rule as well. But yeah, I do encourage people to really be, you want to be careful where you're getting your nutrition information from,
Right.
because it can be very confusing out there. And I've heard some very harmful information being delivered to athletes. That's often when people land in my office. But yes, there's a lot of false information out there. So you do need to be careful.
Let's actually talk about that.
Great.
What are some of those misconceptions or misinformation that you think are common
Sure.
that are out there?